Thanks to our military and our allies and the brave fighters of Afghanistan, the Taliban regime is coming to an end. Yet our responsibilities to the people of Afghanistan have not ended. We work for a new era of human rights and human dignity in that country.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So what is the level of confidence that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place.
And do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had is you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable. So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Hello everyone, today I am going to talk about basically the fall of Kabul and after all Afghanistan. Before talking about the fall of Kabul, it is important to understand the reasons and structural things that led to this moment. We have to go back to the early 1980s. In 1979, USSR invaded the Afghanistan. With that, there was a resistance movement called the Mujahideens arise. To fight with the Mujahideens, the late leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama Bin Laden, came to Afghanistan. With the support of CIA, the Mujahideens were managed to expel the Soviet forces, effectively creating a government in Kabul which does not have a centralized power. There were many tribal leaders, elders, military leaders who are holding power in this anarchic time. So while the Russians were in Afghanistan, there were huge amount of young people who flew to the border towns with Pakistan. It is where in Pakistan border towns they went to fundamental religious schools. Some of these schools were led by some extremist jihadist scholars. These people added some extremist jihadist ideologies into these young people. These young people now, after fall of USSR from Kabul, returned to there. They wanted to create a much stable system. So they created this Taliban movement and marched into Kabul, effectively taking the power in the Kabul. After that, they assassinated the then leader of Afghanistan and ruled the Kabul and Afghanistan, except for some regions where this resistance movement called the Northern Alliance held. I will talk about the Northern Alliance current situation at the end of this video. What happens after that? I mentioned Osama Bin Laden, who came to Afghanistan to fight against the Russians. He later became an idealistic leader, extremist leader, and formed the Al-Qaeda, which at the time enjoyed a coexistent peaceful relationship with the Taliban. So he has this idea, a dream to defeat two superpowers. Now they defeated the Soviets, they wanted to bring another superpower into Afghanistan. So he orchestrated this attack on American popular 9/11 attack. He created this attack with his trademark with simultaneous attacks at the same time. When he is launching a simultaneous attack at the same time, Americans knew since it is his trademark, it is an attack led by Al-Qaeda. So they went to hiding when the Americans came to invade Afghanistan. It is popularly known that due to some leaks in cables later on, Americans did not know the maps of Afghanistan when they came into Afghanistan. Some of them used old British map when the British earlier tried to colonize the Afghanistan's early times. So why this mission or American invasion led to staying America in Afghanistan for 20 years? Back then, George W. Bush regime and American foreign policy had this idea to create democratic world and the democratic societies, even it means that by force. So they had this idea called as a nation building. So by 2003, Americans basically defeated the military infrastructure of Taliban, but they decided to stay in America. For what? For this new policy called nation building, which failed in Iraq and now which is evident to fail in Afghanistan. What is this nation building? Nation building is that you stay in a country and you try to bring infrastructure, you try to change the political system of this country, you try to implement the values you believe, such as democratic electoral systems and policies such as giving equal rights to everyone, talk about women's rights, and even went into such policies as LGBTQ rights. So they managed to implement these policies, especially in the Kabul, city of Kabul, where Americans had a proper control. Kabul had moderate Muslim population which lived under American occupation. So the Kabuls tend to have this view about moderate Islam. But what happens in the other part of Afghanistan? In rural Afghanistan's infrastructure development did not win. So people live in poverty, there were corruption, there were mistrust about the rule of law. When there is mistrust about the rule of law, people tend to thought that if we can implement a Sharia system has very strict laws for adultery, for thieves and so on. They believe that since this legal system is corrupted, at least we can have a very swift, fast and accurate legal system, which most of Westerners think that inhuman and break human rights. But Afghanistan thought in the context of their country, and in the most of the time Americans did not understand the social, cultural dimensions of the Afghan society. but they tend to stay in there. They created even an American university in Kabul. They created schools. Some of these schools were created in the areas which were not needed, so they become empty at some times, and some of these policies become successful. That is the one reason that the people in Kabul, majority of them wanted to flee while the Afghanistan take control of the country, because they don't want to live under these harsh rules. And also people who are now 15 years, 20 years, 25 years old, they have no experience to live under Taliban rule, because they are born just after the American invasion. So they value these democratic values, liberty, they want much freedom, so on. So why and how the Taliban managed to capture Kabul and Afghanistan so fast? One of the key reasons is that even the Americans were occupied Afghanistan. These Talibans controlled all the roads that lead to capitals of these provinces. So they left only the capital. So when the Americans left, they just have to capture those capitals, then whole country fallen. Another reason is that the America created Afghan National Army, which doomed to fail, because they were trained the way Americans were conducting operations. How Americans were conducting operations? Americans were conducting operations simultaneously with superior air cover all the time. So when that air cover is taken out of the context, Afghan National Army could not defend even they wanted. And also Afghanistan is a huge geographical location, so there were very limited special forces, and it is difficult to send air cover to those places to the Afghan National Army, since the Americans left all the sudden. The failure of evacuations actually lies with the Biden administration. As many agreed, even if the Americans stay until 2050, then left, even after that the Taliban will take over. So there is no mean to stay further, but the thing is that the Americans could have planned the evacuation properly. Now 18,000 to 40,000 interpreters, most of them are not American citizens, some of them does not hold green card or documents, some of them have deleted those documents because in fear of repercussions from Taliban. So they face a huge threat, and also even the Americans, we have recently known that the Americans sent a helicopter to a nearby hotel to rescue some 169 American citizens. So this is the situation right now in Afghanistan. So will America learn? Basically America already learned, because they are no longer following this nation building policy. You can see in the Middle East, such as in the conflict, while when we are talking about the Arab uprising, America is not using the ground force. They are sometimes using a very specific group like Navy SEAL 6 or another very sophisticated groups to attack certain individuals. Other than that, they are now supporting a ground opposition group, giving air cover and weapons and logistic support. It is up to them to change the regime in the America's favor. If they fail, the burden on America is less and the political backfire is less, since there are no American ground forces in that country. So there is a one region like Panjshir Valley. I don't know whether I am pronouncing this correctly, since I am not Afghan, and I don't know how to pronounce some name of some of these provinces. But there is this one valley called as Panjshir Valley, where there are some guerrilla movement forming right now to take on the Taliban. This valley is very important to talk about because this valley has never fallen to either USSR or Taliban in 1996 or Americans in 2001 and Taliban again in 2021 until today. But it is important to understand we should not romanticize this location, even it is some kind of like movie location where you make a last stand. Why I am telling we should not romanticize. If you romanticize too much, then Taliban might launch all-in attack. They might fall, but the thing is that with American weaponry and some Black Hawk helicopters that they have taken and huge weaponry now they have, even Humvees, if they launch using those equipments and they have night vision cameras also, so it might not be easy to hold this geographical location because it is surrounded by strongholds of Taliban. After it is important to point out that this location is located 150 kilometers northwest of Kabul. Some senior members of the outset government like the vice presidents and ex defense minister also stations there. The vice president who named himself the caretaking president told recently that he will never ever under any circumstance bow down to Taliban, and he even write some opinion article in Washington Post asking American for military support. Earlier in 90s there was support for Tajikistan and also in some part India and also Iran. We don't know, Iran is no longer, we have no idea whether Iran is no longer supporting this movement right now, and the ability of other countries which support these resistance fighters have the capacity to do so right now because the Taliban has taken whole country. This location is famous for natural defenses because it has only one entry point that is also through this river which can be easily defended. It is also known for emerald, which is known to finance the resistance, and these people who are living here also, even before the Taliban came, they asked for some autonomy from the central government. So all this is now in the hand of some resistant people who are led by the caretaker president, who himself called him as the legitimate leader, and there are some Afghan special forces and equipment with the natural defenses. It is interesting to see whether this place is holding up, but with Taliban taken control of all the other places, even if this resistance hold this place up, unless they can mount a major offensive and outset the central Taliban regime in Kabul, the effectiveness of this regime will be less important with the time. So that is about everything right now happening in Afghanistan. America is like trying so hard to evacuate their citizen meantime, which was ill planned, and Afghanistan is kind of went into anarchic situation. So this is my analysis on the Afghanistan conflict. So if you think you learned something from this video, if you think you learned even one single fact, I hope you support to me by subscribing to my channel. I hope you enjoy watching my video. I will lastly tell something about myself. I live in Sri Lanka. I studied in University of Colombo. I studied at Department of International Relations, specialized in peace and conflict stream, and I am focus and expertise lies mainly in conflict in Middle East, and other than that I am interested in conflicts happening all around the world. So I like to talk about those things also, and also cover about this topic more in depth in future videos. So if you think I did a good job, if you learned something, if you have something to thank me, comment and please subscribe to me to support, and make sure to click that bell icon so you can get the notification when I cover an analysis again. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers from here. Thank you so much. Stay safe.